Hi everyone,
My name is Lim Ying Xuan.
my name is Choi Ling.
Today I would like to give an introduction about the Pulau Batu Puteh. Pulau Batu Puteh, which is also called Pulau Bangka, is a small granite outcrop. The island lies 7.7 nautical miles from Malaysia mainland, but 35.5 nautical miles over the sea from Singapore. In 1979, the Pulau Batu Puteh dispute was a territorial dispute between Singapore and Malaysia over several islands at the eastern entrance to the Singapore Strait. For example, Singapore has argued that Pulau Batu Puteh was a land belonging to no one, whereas Malaysia illustrated that the island could not at any relevant time has been territorial as it is always been a part of Johor, which is now a state of Malaysia. So, Singapore is the first who suggested submitting the territorial dispute to the International Court of Justice. For instance, Prime Minister of Singapore Lee Kuan Yew was dispatched Tanbuntek to disclose the documentary evidence. On 6 February 2003, Malaysia and Singapore signed a special agreement at Putrajaya. They mutually agreed to refer the dispute to the International Court of Justice for a decision, and it was notified to the court in July 2003. Therefore, the case was presided over by the Vice President of International Court of Justice.
Now I want to talk about the reaction of Malaysia and Singapore about Pulau Batu Puteh. From the reaction of Malaysia, we can see that Dr. Rais Yatin, the Malaysian politician, asserted that since South Lake was within the territorial waters of Middle Rocks, so Malaysia appears to be the sovereign holder. Foreign Ministry of Malaysia also asked Malaysian media to refer Pedra Branca as Batu Puteh. Malaysia had renewed the letter written by Governor Butterworth to the Sultan and Temenggung of Johor seeking permission to build lighthouse on Pedra Branca. Sultan Iskandar of Johor reminded that Pulau Batu Puteh is not
Singapore, but it belongs to Johor.
Yeah.
The Kelantan Prince alleged that the sea surrounding Pedra Branca had always been in Johor, hence and had never been surrendered to the British or Singapore.
From the reaction of Singapore, we can see that the Senior Minister of State for Foreign Affairs stated that the maritime territory around the island is an exclusive economic zone. Singapore Deputy Prime Minister S. Jayakumar said that they are pleased with the judgment because the court has awarded sovereignty over Pedra Branca, which is the main feature in dispute to Singapore. Prime Minister of Singapore Lee Hsien Loong said was pleased with the result because it's a good way for Malaysia and Singapore to resolve disagreement and maintaining good relations with each other.
Now, I'm going to talk about the measure taken by the party. First, Malaysia had used a strategy that is convinced the other party that the settlement is the best possible. As we know that Malaysia and Singapore are the part of ASEAN, and one of the fundamental principles in ASEAN is non-interference. This principle purports to respect the sovereignty and good relation of cooperation. Southeast Asian countries are reluctant to solve the conflict of territorial dispute through the involvement of international justice institutions. So, Malaysia and Singapore decide to bring this case to ICJ to maintain the diplomatic relation. They request the ICJ to determine whether the sovereignty over the Pulau Batu Puteh belongs to Malaysia or Singapore.
One of the measures taken by party is pushing settlement near opponents' resistance point. This strategy will make Singapore feels like winning. In Pulau Batu Puteh dispute, Singapore had exercised their sovereignty on Pulau Batu Puteh by surveying and observing the shipwreck and the navigation risks around the maritime territory of the island before 2003. But Malaysia only protested about it on 2003 and said that those actions are taken due to the regulations in UNCLOS and SOLAS. Malaysia doesn't think that this is the proof of Singapore exercising their sovereignty on the island. Other than that, Singapore also applies some control and management regarding Pulau Batu Puteh. For example, Malaysian government officers were needed to show official approval given by the Singapore government when visiting Pulau Batu Puteh for tidal surveying purpose. Singapore also carried out the surveys on the shipwrecks which happened around the island. Since the cases of the shipwrecks only take note by Singapore but not Johor state government, thus ICJ consider this as significant supports for the appeal of Singapore's sovereignty on Pulau Batu Puteh.
My name is Yor Ying, and I'll be presenting the first half of suggestions. According to an article by South China Morning Post, Malaysia has found 3 evidence that it has ownership over Pulau Batu Puteh and not Singapore. The first evidence was that a confidential telegram in 1958 by the then Governor of Singapore to the Secretary of State for the Colonies in London. The second evidence is a naval incident report that showed that British naval vessels did not view the waters around Pulau Batu Puteh as belonging to Singapore. Lastly, the third evidence is a map dated in 1962 with markings dated February 1996. The first suggestion would be to use distributive negotiation approach. With the 3 evidence mentioned earlier, Malaysian negotiators could use those evidence against the opposition party if this dispute is brought up once again. With the use of solid evidence and strong negotiators from Malaysia, it is definitely possible to change the fate of Pulau Batu Puteh with Malaysia gaining rights to it.
There are 2 ways of approach. The first way of approach will be distributive approach. It is a competitive bargaining strategy in which one party gains only if the other party loses something. Malaysia could apply strategy like alliance with outsiders, since most of the evidence is provided from British. We may alliance with British or other nearby countries because they might have more confidential telegram or information that could help us. The other technique is sweeteners. It means that Malaysia could offer a special concession to Singapore by giving some offer or benefit, either in this conflict or other conflicts. For example, the water conflict between Malaysia and Singapore. Since Malaysia and Singapore are neighboring countries, any conflict between us might affect our relationship. For integrative solution, we might provide an alternative solution, which is both countries have the right to administer the Pulau Batu Puteh. Malaysia and Singapore can provide the expedientia together and sharing the information on the island to protect the territory nearby together. This will be the more suitable way to solve this conflict and gain the administration territory of Pulau Batu Puteh. Thank you.
Fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like.